Good afternoon, everyone. So we warmly welcome you back to Research Week 2023 Postgraduate Day sessions. So now we are moving to Fireside Chat, which is another interesting and impactful session of today's lineup. So we having four panelists. Three panelists and one moderator on Fireside Chat, which will be discussing on a role of tools based on artificial intelligence in ethical research. Before we start with the discussion, first of all, I'll be introducing our moderator for today's discussion, Professor Nilas Pereira, Professor in Supply Chain Management, Department of Transport Management and Logistics Engineering, University of Moratuwa. Professor Nilas Pereira is a professor in Supply Chain Management at the Department of Transport Management and Logistics Engineering, University of Moratuwa. He is also the founding director of the Center for Supply Chain Operations and Logistics Optimization at the same university. He received the Most Outstanding Graduate of the Year award at the University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka, in addition to obtaining the gold medal for best performance in transport and logistics management. He subsequently worked in ERP consulting for several global brands before obtaining a PhD in supply chain optimization from the University of Sydney, Australia, through a full scholarship funded by the Australian Research Centre. Nilas collaborates with nearly 30 universities across the world that have been featured in top-ranked journals in the field. Professor Nilas Pereira obtained 2 presidential awards for scientific research from the National Research Council, awarded to the most impactful 100 publications coming out from locally based authors in any scientific discipline each year. So I graciously invite Professor Nilas Pereira to conduct Fireside Chat on Research Week 2023 and to introduce our panelists. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much for the lovely introduction. So, Fireside Chats, the epistemology of Fireside Chats date back to the actually the Second World War, when the President of USA, Franklin D. Roosevelt, delivered updates about what was happening on the war front. So now things have changed. We are not going to talk about war. We are going to talk about research and how these new tools that are coming up are going to impact you as postgraduate students and also to the academic staff who's present here. So we have a fantastic panel, experts in their respective field, who would be basically sharing their insights. So given that we are a little bit behind schedule, I'll quickly get into introducing the panelists. So first we have Associate Professor Niraj Ture Raja. He is an Associate Professor in Built Environment and leads the Sustainable Construction Futures Research Group at Northumbria University in the UK. Niraj's research interests cover people and process-related aspects of the built environment, including how organizations and people work in the context of technological innovation, disaster resilience, education, and skills development. Niraj was the previous head of the Department of Architecture and Built Environment. Previously, he led the Digital Construction Center and managed the MSc in Building Information Modeling and Management program at Birmingham City University. He has worked with a number of world-renowned companies, including the Ministry of Justice UK, Wilmot Dixon, Weinberger, and KPMG. He has written more than 100 peer-reviewed publications and coordinated various conferences, as well as being involved extensively in research, bidding, and managed several research and employee engagement projects. So, Niraj, please take the stage. We are very happy to have you over. And secondly, let me also introduce one of our colleagues from University of Moratuwa who's an expert in this domain, Dr. R.T. Udayasankar. He's the head of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, and an experienced engineer who is presently heading the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, as I mentioned. He's the director of Data Search, a multidisciplinary research center that aims to engage in research in data science, engineering, and analytics. He obtained his doctoral degree in computer science from the University of Georgia in the United States, and his special interest and eloquent practice in advanced machine learning and advanced data science make him a unique expert in this ever-evolving dynamic science, and a fantastic resource person for this topic as well. Bringing his industrial experience from globally reputed informational retrieval organizations such as Google, Microsoft, Ask.com, and Glassdoor, and teaching experience from the University of Moratuwa as well as the University of Georgia, Uday has a platter on the table for the data-driven leader. So, without further ado, I'd like to call you upon the stage as well. And today is the postgraduate research student day, so obviously we need to have a postgraduate student in the panel, and who better to have than Nisal Ranasinghe. Nisal obtained his BSc Honours degree in Electronic and Telecommunication Engineering from the University of Moratuwa in 2018 with a first class honours. Following this, he spent 3 impactful years at Asiata Digital Labs as a data engineer and senior data science engineer until October 2021. During this period, he gained experience in big data analytics, deep learning, and reinforcement learning. Nisal is currently pursuing his PhD at the University of Melbourne, Australia. His research focuses on symbolic regression, explainable AI, and AI for healthcare, showcasing his commitment to pushing the boundaries of artificial intelligence. So I'd like to call upon stage Nisal to give some important insights as a graduate student. So the emergence of artificial intelligence has been happening for several decades, but the emergence of Gen AI has really touched all our lives over the last 1.5 years, I would say. And I'm pretty sure all of us in this room would have used Gen AI in different ways and means over the last several months. If you have not done so already, you're behind schedule, you should probably catch up. Without taking too much time, I'd like to turn attention to Dr. Uday and ask Dr. Uday to share what Gen AI is and what does it really offer to research. What are the opportunities in terms of engaging Gen AI in a research platform?
Check. It works. Thanks. Even in the generation of Gen AI, projector connection and mic connections are always sensitive. So thanks for the kind introduction and very good afternoon, everybody. Yes, Gen AI is changing the pace of research in many ways, right? When it comes to first discovering information, right, and going towards the literature review, it has changed. It has changed a lot. The major challenge, though, retrieving information from a generative AI solution such as ChatGPT or any other similar models which are built by, built using large language models we have seen, the source of truth is not given, right? When you ask a question, it gives you information. Yeah. Keep on here.
Check.
Check. So yeah, so as I said, you can use generative AI for finding information, especially for the literature review, scoping your problem, learning, learning things that is happening around it. But the major challenge I see, like using solutions like ChatGPT or similar solutions, that if you do Google search, right, you are given from which source you are given this information. Whereas here, the source of truth where this is discovered is not directly given. There's a common, well-known issue in such solutions, such as known as hallucination, right? What they call is that it actually, the generative AI solutions hallucinate that it knows everything. When you ask a question whether it knows or don't know, it will try to infer and give it to you. So we don't really know whether it's inferred knowledge, is it really the truth, or is it may be like a truth that is supported by or not. That's one major challenge. But on the other hand, it really speed up the discovery, right? So I feel it's an asset if you are smart enough to question it, right? If you're smart enough to manage it, it's a really resourceful asset when it comes to literature review. And it actually further also, like writing, research paper, it assists you, writing code, it assists you. So, I mean, in computing related research, even to enhance your code, it assists you and finding, issues when you're stuck into a bug. So it has a long way to help you in that.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic explanation. So I'd like to jump along those lines and piggyback on your ideas and ask Niraj, basically, how has Northumbria University embraced Gen AI? Obviously, it's perhaps I could say early days, given that it's not more than 2 years since this came out. How has Northumbria's research fabric changed over the last couple of years, given the intervention of Gen AI?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm glad to be here, and good afternoon, everyone. I think we are taking a cautious approach, but I think the most important part is that we are encouraging students to use this one. I think that's important. We are cautious in certain aspects, especially level 4 modules. So we have a system where level 4 is where you students come in, the first year students, and they go on to level 5 and 6. And when they move through different years, what happens is that what they look for changes. So in the first year, we may be asking them to recall knowledge or maybe understand certain things. And the second year, we start asking them to apply things. And then the third year, we start asking them to look at critically question and evaluate and create things. So that change means that something like AI is, at the moment, we are looking at ChatGPT, and very much it's in the first year where it is more influential than in the next years, because you can easily recall information. So we are taking a bit more cautious approach in the first year. So each and every staff member, so we don't have first of all, we don't have a policy. We don't have a university-wide policy. So our policies are very similar to what has happened before. The interesting one is that one of my colleagues in our department said, ChatGPT is like Google, when Google got introduced. It's another way of doing things, presenting things. And what we are looking at is that awareness raising between students as well as staff members in terms of how to use it. In the first year, module leaders have the ability to restrict students from using it, depending on the modules, and some staff members will actually ask students to use it. In the second year and third year, we don't actually take too much worry about these things, because the reason is it's very much about critical analysis and application, and it's not something that works you can't use AI to do some of the things. One of the easiest example is we have something we produce, bill of quantities, and most of the quantity surveyors here will know that. And if you ask ChatGPT to produce a bill of quantities, it produces something completely different, because it doesn't understand what it is. One of the reasons is that there isn't that many examples in their training, what the training is given to ChatGPT. But the overall worry that we have is that any of AI and any of these things has a bias in it, and it's modeled after us. We are biased at the end of the day as human beings, and therefore the data that is given to training for the ChatGPT is biased, and therefore it is biased. If you ask something about, it stereotypes things most of the time. And I think the one other thing that I want to specifically talk about that you alluded is its ability to the explainability of the things. So you find something and you don't know how and where it came from. And it's like a black box where things happen and you get something out and you don't know whether it's right or wrong. There are a few problems with it. We have been telling students to Citation is quite a challenging thing for ChatGPT. It doesn't do very well. We are educating staff in terms of spotting these issues and working with the students in terms of use it appropriately. It's not we don't use it appropriately. So I think that I want to go back to the same thing, that one thing that you said. If you can question what it can produce, you have a better advantage of using it. If you can't, you are in for a trouble, because nowadays we have tools that can find out whether you are using things like ChatGPT. So yeah, that's where we are. So we don't have a policy, we have guidelines in terms of raising awareness and having communication between the staff and students. That's what we do at this point in time.
So I think, I mean, that just gives a very, very good introduction into what are the issues with respect to Gen AI. Sometimes you get cases where, like, let's say, for example, there might be a paper that focuses on a specific topic from maybe all four of us. Gen AI might actually, basically manifest a paper out of thin air, which puts all our names together, and which might be misleading, and actually that might not be there. At least it's not there right now. So, so that's one of the issues that is there, and especially for a grad student. I think Niraj was referring to, especially the fact that for first year or second year grad students, it might be a good starting point to get their hands on in terms of understanding the concepts. And obviously when they progress towards the latter stage of their PhDs, MPhils and so on, there may need to be, obviously there would be limitations. But Nisal, as a grad student at Melbourne, obviously one of the leading institutions in Australia, and of course you're specializing in artificial intelligence also. So how has Gen AI and other tools helped you to, take your career forward as a grad student? Has there been any, policies or regulations imposed upon you by the University of Melbourne which has guided you in that journey?
Yeah. So yeah, first of all, I need to thank you for inviting me here. It's a really good opportunity for me. So during my time as a graduate student at the University of Melbourne, yeah, so definitely I have used some of these AI tools. For example, definitely ChatGPT, tools like Grammarly for editing my writing, and more recently I've used tools like GitHub Copilot, which is basically an AI-powered tool for coding. So I think these tools have helped me in different ways, and the main thing would probably be in terms of my language. So we know that these are large language models, so they should be definitely helpful in terms of improving our language. So if you look at the population of the world, out of 7 billion people, only about, I think, 400 million or so use English as their first language. But ultimately, when we are doing research, we need to communicate in English so that we can reach a wider audience. So these tools can help us bridge this language barrier in terms of, so for example, you can give whatever writing you have to some of these tools, and it'll do some editing of the writing, make it better structured, fix spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, and all that. And maybe another way you could do it is you could give your writing to some of these tools, and it will give you some feedback on your writing. Maybe it will say that this has to be structured this way. Maybe it will point out some of the things that you're doing wrong in your writing. So I think, so that's, in terms of language, there is a lot of help you can take from these tools. And I think another way that you can use this is just to sort of do these menial or mechanical tasks that you need to do. So we know that in research, the main thing that's sort of required is your innovation and doing something novel. But inevitably, when you're doing research, you need to do these mechanical, menial tasks. So for example, like if I'm writing a code, maybe I have a code in one programming language like Python, and I need to convert it to, say, Java or something. So if I know both of the languages, that would be pretty simple to do, but it will be very time consuming and it won't really require a lot of intellect. So for that, maybe I can use some tool like ChatGPT, or I think GitHub Copilot also does it. And within a few seconds, it will generate the code for me, and then I can just go and look at it to double check whether it works fine. So there are other ways that we can use these tools, like for typing emails, maybe to make a schedule for ourselves, and so on. So these are just a few ways that you can use GPT or any of these AI tools in your day-to-day work. I'm sure that in the future there will be many more tools, and we'll definitely have to keep up with the existing technology and rapidly moving technology. And I think in terms of the policies that are there in the University of Melbourne, so as you said, this is a quite new field. A new field as in this massive widespread adoption started maybe like a year ago. So even the universities are finding it hard to keep up with this rapidly changing technology, but that doesn't mean that there aren't any policies. There are. So I think the main thing is that whatever work that you submit to the university has to be your own. So if you get an AI tool to substantially do your assignments or do your research papers for you, that will be considered as academic misconduct. So they'll consider it as someone else did your work. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that these are banned, because the university doesn't outright ban these tools to be used, but you have to use it within a certain boundaries. So basically the idea is, if you're using these tools, the level of assistance that you can get from the tools should be the same level as you would get from someone else. So for example, if you're writing your thesis, you are allowed to pay an editor and hire an editor to edit your thesis for you. Similarly, you can get the same level of assistance from an AI tool. And if you're writing, say, a paper, then you can give it to your colleague, to your peer, just to get it proofread, to get some ideas for improvement. So you can do that. So those are not prohibited. So there are some policies available, policies outlined by the university, but since it's a new field, those are basically ever evolving policies. So the universities are finding it a bit hard to keep up with it, but these are evolving, and I'm sure as time goes on, they'll be more descriptive and we'll have more mature policies.
Yeah, Dr. Udaya, I want to piggyback on what Nisal said. And now, as an academic, as someone who's supervising research students, what would your advice be to students? Because there would be various tools that are coming there. Of course, ChatGPT, which came about a year ago, took the world by storm. But there has been, Bing AI, DALI, all of these different tools. How should a student really, decide on what tool to adopt to? Number one, and what level that you go using that tool. What is the line that you should basically confine yourself to? How can a student make that decision, and does that also require discussion with the supervisor? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a very, very interesting and tough question, right? How do you choose a tool? Specifically in this arena of generative AI, I think you get a tool every week. There are tools that are fundamentally different, like OpenAI came with ChatGPT, then Bing, and then the Brat and various other things, right? There are tools that are built upon that. There are tools like nowadays you get like specifically to write research paper, specifically to assist you with emails. Like they're building on top of that. Same with image generation, right? I mean, there are tools that can build images, then there are tools then they take it up and specifically focus on headshot. Modifying your headshot for profile features, and then various other things. And this is an ever evolving field these days, and it is very difficult to pick and choose. It is, and that is not straightforward. The even like companies like Gartners have not really put out good metrics to quantify these people, these kind of tools to show what works where, right? So at this point, one way to sort of, if you are in that field, in the field of generative AI or similar kind of field, conducting research, you should stay on top of it. But if you're a consumer, my recommendation would be to go with the one that is already been reasonably settled, right? And once in a while, like, listen to the ongoing trends from aggregated, research journals or aggregated tech talks or something. So then you can pick and choose, because we are living in a world where you are flooded with information. Picking and choose, not only for this tool, anything is difficult, and you really have to develop your own mechanism, in fact a defense mechanism from information to really stay awake and stay meaningful, right? So that is one. The second question is, where do you draw a line? See that this lines differs between discipline, in my opinion. For example, if you are a computer engineer who is doing, who is working on coding, I strongly encourage them to look at how ChatGPT can be helpful for you. But as he said, like, you should own your work, right? Finally, what you deliver, if there's a problem, you should be able to explain. You can't say, like, I don't know this part is ChatGPT. You can't. You should own. So as long as you own your work, you can deliver it, right? It's very subjective in that sense, right? So it comes with your experience, expertise in that sense, right? So where do you draw the line in terms of ChatGPT? Is like, so if you are using ChatGPT as a knowledge discovery to bootstrap your process, I think it's okay. But you don't get a single source to cite for. Citations, there are exclusive tool nowadays built for citations. They are themselves are not yet so matured, but do a decent job. So that's secondary, like literature reviews and things can be done. But if you're going to use a ChatGPT to write your research paper, be aware, right? If you write using ChatGPT, even if a paid model where like you can tone down the so-called exemplary, like robotic English to a more human-like English, there are ways to do it. Still, you have to be careful. There are sometimes silly mistakes you'll do. But if you write something and asking for a paraphrasing or asking like, okay, this is how I want you to do it, and if you can take control, you're good to go. I sometimes take advantage of ChatGPT to prepare my exam papers. But I don't ask it to just give me an exam paper. I ask it like, this is my ILO, this is how I want to test it. I want it to be a contrasting example. I want it in MCQ. Oh, no, I don't want you to question on definition, make it a use case. I spend time before I derive at one last question. But if you're willing to take that route, it's okay, right? So my favorite advice to all my computer engineering graduates is that, see, if you're a computer engineer, I think it's true for engineers, you work so hard to be a lazy person, but you better work hard first, then be lazy.
Yeah, very good point there. So I want to sort of continue the conversation by talking about how that will relate to in terms of making a publication, because obviously the success of your PhD, MPhil, or even the MSc would actually depend on the publications you make and obviously the quality of the journals that you're looking to publish. And I've seen across, like in my discipline as well as many other disciplines, journals, editors are adopting policies with respect to this. And when students, actually the graduate students, they go out and do research, how do you think as a supervisor, supervisors in Sri Lanka probably are new to this more than you are. What can we as supervisors, how can we advise our students to follow these guidelines so that we don't really, get into hot water by doing something very unethical, and the student might actually do it sometimes, or maybe we might be complicit to it, and eventually that might stunt us from making a good publication out of it. So what are your insights in terms of how supervisors should intervene in terms of ensuring that ChatGPT or Bing AI or whatever is done within the parameters of potential journals? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. I think we all become supervisors by reading and writing. So I think one of the things is that otherwise you can't be a supervisor. You shouldn't be a supervisor. And because you have done that, you know a style of writing, you know certain words. So one of the example I got recently, and I have a student who publishes a lot, who writes a lot. Recently I've been getting papers in a language that is very exemplary, very, the words that I haven't seen, I haven't heard. So I was wondering where is these things are coming from. And it's interesting because, because when you read, you see the flow is not there. You see it's broken. You see there are things that you have to stop and think why he is saying it or why she is saying it. And so I had a chat with this particular student, and I understood that he's using ChatGPT to generate some of these things. And I'm not against it. That's the important part. What I am trying to do with him is that, yes, get the questions to understand the concepts, but then you need to write and you need to link your writing. Our writing, when you are writing to journal papers, you will understand that we are not just producing knowledge. We are not recalling knowledge. We are producing new knowledge. And part of that idea is to link your argument, justifying your argument towards whatever you are trying to say. One of the problems that you would see from this type of writing, that when you do ChatGPT and things like that, there is no personalization. You don't see the student in it. You see a paper full of words. And you start questioning, is it actually your work? And what my chat with that particular student is, yes, use this one, but make this yours. So you use, understand, and reproduce in the way that you think is appropriate, and it flows. The problem I always find with this type of writing is the flow in the discussion. It always breaks. When you bring something else into it, it breaks. It doesn't flow well. And I'm someone who likes to see the justification and the story rather than everything else. So it's not just your finding, it's the story that you are telling. Can you tell a good story? And these type of tools struggle to tell a good story because they don't understand. These type of tools provide you knowledge. They don't understand the context. So you as the student has to provide that knowledge. So one of the things that I have discussions with my students is to use them, get them to review papers. And this is the funny part because I ask the student to review and then I compare the review of that one from ChatGPT. One of the problems is that ChatGPT can only review papers before 2021. It can't review anything afterwards. So you look at a 2015 paper, review both, and you would see completely different picture because the student comes with its own understanding and the context, where that is the production of all what the facts are there. So it's quite easy to understand, and I think as supervisors you should get involved in the process of publication. You should make sure that there is flow because your name is on it and it makes sense and it's telling a good story. If it doesn't tell a good story, for me, it's not a paper. So hence I put a lot of effort with the students to tell a good story out of. As part of it, we have lots of different discussions, and some of them are about ChatGPT, some of them are about language, some of them are about bringing critical analysis as part of the discussion, not just reproduction of knowledge. I think that's how I currently deal with them.
Yeah, and sometimes you also get the experience of getting reviews which are generated by ChatGPT. In fact, we had a case of that yesterday where not that we can guarantee that it was the case, but it was basically something a little different. So I think we are venturing into a new paradigm altogether, where we as academics also need to completely continue to learn, and stay on top of the game, because I think more than ever things are changing very rapidly. And I think with Gen AI tools, as you said, which are coming out very quickly, and the capacity, the ability of computing information is also changing. There are lots of things that we need to stay up to speed with. So Nisal, I think you're working in artificial intelligence itself, and you're an artificial intelligence researcher. So one of the things I want to specially question you is basically, what are these specific challenges that you face at University of Melbourne, and what are the specific challenges that you can probably advise to the rest of the postgraduate students who are here, that you foresee that may emerge in the next couple of years? Because this is an emerging field. There are lots of new challenges we would experience. This might not be a topic we would have talked about maybe a couple of years ago, obviously, But now we are here, we are talking about it. So as an AI researcher, what do you think are the next frontiers going into the future?
Yeah, so like I research in AI, so I have like a reasonable understanding of what the challenges are and some of the reasons behind these challenges. So there are definitely many challenges that arise with this widespread adoption of these tools. I think some of these challenges arise from the technical limitations of these large language models like ChatGPT. So definitely misinformation is a challenge, like it was mentioned earlier. So when you ask something from ChatGPT, it might give you like a very confident answer, but in the end it might be completely wrong. And you might not know that there is a chance of this being wrong as well. So that's a pretty big challenge. And also at the same time, there can be some biases incorporated. So these models are trained on a large amount of data, and whatever biases that are in this data would be reflected in the outputs of the models like ChatGPT. So for example, there have been studies trying to give CVs of people and asking ChatGPT to screen them for you. And when they look at the results, they see that there are some kind of racial biases, gender biases in these results that ChatGPT gives. So we need to be really careful when we are, and we shouldn't just blindly trust everything that AI gives us. And definitely, apart from the technical challenges, or technical limitations rather, there are a lot of ethical concerns that are being, that arise from this widespread adoption of large language models. Definitely, plagiarism is one. I think that was talked about earlier as well by Dr. Uday Shankar and Professor Niraj. And I'd like to talk about something that maybe is not talked about a lot, and that is the problem of fairness. So when we think about these large language models, we know that in ChatGPT, they have the free version, which is GPT 3.5, and GPT-4, which is supposed to be more powerful, which is behind a paywall. So when you think about especially countries like Sri Lanka, developing countries, not everyone would have the financial capacity to go and purchase GPT-4. It's maybe $10, $20 or something like that. So that brings us to the question, is when there's a disparity between like the accessibility of these GPT models, this could increase the societal divisions that we have. So there will be a set of people who use GPT models and any other AI tools to improve their work, and some people, because they can't access it, maybe it's because it's too expensive, maybe it's because they don't know about it, or for whatever reason, they don't take use of these tools. So I think that's also something that will be a concern going forward. So basically navigating these challenges would not be easy, but we need to proactively search for solutions to all of these challenges.
Yeah, so so certainly something that all the postgraduate students should be looking forward to. But at the same time, I want to get Dr. Udaya to wear your administrator hat and share your thoughts on what do you think with respect to regulations, guidelines? How should universities be proactive in terms of making sure that we do ethical research? We obviously need to use Gen AI. We can't run away from it, obviously. But where do we have to draw a line at a particular point, but we have to evolve also in terms of the rapid change of technology. So how do you think that we can develop guidelines, or do you think we should even go beyond guidelines in terms of developing regulations or rules, and what should be the process for that?
Right. So let me tell you another small story before we get into that. Generative AI has been there even before ChatGPT, right? Way back, I'm talking about like maybe a couple of decades, like roughly speaking. There was a tool to write research papers, right? It will automatically write research papers. You just need to key in maybe keywords. That's it. This was built by a couple of research students, and what they did was to test it. That paper was submitted to a conference, and it got accepted. So they took the paper, they presented, and they took pictures, come back. After that, with the pictures and the presentation accepted and everything, they published. Until then, it was a secret, right? So it was probably from Harvard or somewhere. So, you know, if you look at it reversely, ChatGPT can be a testing tool for bogus conferences. So we do have another way, like there are a lot of bogus conferences, right? But on the other hand, we have conferences which are less funded. There are topics of areas which are not so much money is being channeled, but very valuable to the human. For example, low resource languages, right? All the language researches are for languages which are where the money is, or the people high populated and where the money is, right? Where are there languages, indigenous languages, languages where with small population speak, we don't have money to do research. So these conferences will get marginalized with the current this kind of situation. Because what I see is that ChatGPT, if we might end up doing is that a lot of people will start use ChatGPT blindly, and end up publishing papers that will be accepted where there are either is a bogus conference or conferences where not enough resources to rigidly go, set up guidelines, right? So they will be like, so the divide will increase. The conference with the high value, they will still go for very rigid conference peer review process, and they will be able to sort of invest on that. There will be the reviewers will be able to invest time to do that. They will still be on the top, and the spectrum will kind of deplete in the middle and become, a lot of conference will be pushed down. That's one risk I foresee, and I'm worried about that. That's being said. Now we're setting up the guidelines for as a university or research for as a research institution. How do we sort of set the guidelines, right? I think ChatGPT is not a tool to write a research or to discover a novelty. You have a novelty, and you should, as a researcher, you should learn storytelling, as you said. It's very important researchers learn storytelling. Because if you don't know that, you're failed as a researcher, in my opinion. It's not all about finding something useful. It's about convincing your others also useful. Because the whole idea this science community thrived is by peer reviewing. We respect each other. We respect feedback, right? Unlike other arenas, I mean, for ridiculing like politics or somewhere, people really get agitated. And so there are some other places when you give a feedback, people react. Science is thrived by the fact that we can respectfully, give feedback to others. We can, argue about it, right? So that we will basically defeat the whole idea of science if we don't do that, right? I think it's come to finally a research student's responsibility being a good scientist. Now, what kind of regulation we can build? I think it's not straightforward. First of all, it can be a tool for enhancing your grammar, like a spell corrector, right? I mean, similar to that, now it becomes an advanced spell and language corrector, fine. But if it is going to write a research paper end-to-end, finding novelty for you, thinks about it, I think that's not going to work. You are cheating yourself, because you will not be able to defend the idea that is put forward, right? And in my personal experience, if your idea is owned and you truly believe it will evolve. And it will evolve, and it will push you to the places. But if you have bogus ideas, it will never. So it will eventually die. But as a regulative measures, it's very hard to draw lines, right? So, for example, are we going to completely block ChatGPT? No, you can't. Are we going to continue to sort of let people write anything with that? No, that's also not right. So, as a supervisor, what I always do is that I ask the first draft to be written by the student. Talk me through the idea. Let's build the story. Once the story is there, then for the language, then we go there. But there's another bigger problem going to ChatGPT. You'll never learn the language. You never learn the vocabulary. He mentioned about the wording, right? I learned few words and connectors from my supervisor. I love them. Like one of the word he repeatedly used me, I still could remember the way he pronounces predominantly. It's one of his favorite words. If you take his papers, I think in his every paper you'll find it 2-3 times probably, right? In my supervisor. So I'm saying, you develop a unique signature of language, you will lose that, right? So if you want to be a researcher who everybody will really follow and make an impact, It's a tool, it is not a solution. So you have to understand the difference between a tool and making it a way to printing papers. I mean, ChatGPT is not going to print papers for you. If you look at it that way, you will end up in a bogus conference, and your name will be dragged. So simple as that.
Yeah, so I think, you take us to a very important point, like, so for majority of us who have a PhD, one of the most unique aspects of doing a PhD is the relationship you develop with your supervisor, because you learn from your supervisor, you learn his or her ways. Language is a big part of it. I still remember when I sent my first proposal to my supervisor, he basically sent me back an email which was completely like track changed. Everything was basically red. It was like a meat shop, a butchery. But that was that was part of my learning process. That's how I learned to sort of be able to write in brevity, which is very important, and write targeting those specific journals, which is, part and parcel of our upbringing as doctoral students. So I just want to, get your thoughts on how you think the intervention of Gen AI tools would really impact that relationship between the supervisor and the student, and how should supervisors be more engaged to make sure that we are in touch with the students, as well as the students also take a proactive measure in terms of, not just relying on Gen AI tools, but going the extra step in terms of, staying connected to the supervisor, because, there are heaps of things that the student can learn from the supervisor. Unlike in taught courses, obviously, in a research degree, it's not very formal. There's a lot of, informality that is there, and you have to be proactive in terms of, engaging the most out of your supervisor. For example, when I was doing my PhD, we had 3 students under the same supervisor. The 3 of us learned in different ways. So what are your thoughts on how supervisors as well as students can sort of keep that relationship intact in spite of this new tool that is basically possibly able to create a rift between the 2 of us?
Yeah, thanks. I should say I had the same feedback when I had the first one, full of red marks, change everything. And I think it's a unique thing for Sri Lankans. We write long sentences and long paragraphs to say a simple thing. So I learned a lot in terms of how to write in concise manner, but still telling a story that connects to each other. So it's a learning process, and of course it's a relationship that you build. So I completely agree. I think it's something that is under threat because of this, in some ways. But I think for me it's about your conversation with the student. I don't think, we are in a consumerist world. We can't ban people from doing anything. So people are going to use this ChatGPT, and if they are not using it, as someone said, we are behind. So I think we should engage in the dialogue with the student. So there's no meaning of then trying to hide it. So expose it from the very beginning, discuss about this openly, so that you can work together in producing things. The first thing is that making students realize that they can use it. The second one is getting their acknowledgement that they have used it. I think if you can pass those 2 steps, I think you are in for a win, because then it's an open conversation. If you are not in that conversation, there is a problem, because there are things coming in front of you. You are reading and it's not right. You're asking them to rewrite it, and it goes on and on and on. And the lesson is not learned. You're going to do this again and again and again, and that's where the problem is. So make it clear from the very beginning, it's possible, you are fine to use it, but where the boundaries are. This is where the boundary story comes in, and where do you stop from using it? So I encourage students so it produces knowledge, so it gets knowledge, recalls knowledge from what is out there. Now, it actually makes your work easy. I want to tell this, but when I remember I'm a part of a conference called ARCOM, and in 1990s, when the conference was done, academics write their papers in computers those days, print them, take them to the conference as a printed copy, and there would be one conference proceeding where they all put together their proceedings. And that's how it started. So, and from there onwards to a stage where everyone is doing online, everything is coming in. And of course, we went through the same problem. Is people copying? Is it your own thing? Did you write it? Did you print it? No, no one did that anymore. So the thing is that we have gone through that change, and therefore you understand that this is the next stage in the evolution of this type of writing. And we need to be in it, first of all. I think that's very important. So all the students here, I would encourage them to use it, to understand what it can do. And I think I go back to the same thing that you said at the very beginning. It's your ability to question what comes out of it. And you refine and refine and refine to get to the level where you want the information that you need. But that's not the answer. You rewrite that one on your own words so that there is a flow. Otherwise, it just sticks out in your whole paragraph. There is a sentence that looks like it has come from somewhere else. And it has happened to me a few times with my students. So I ask them, and nowadays they are open about it. They would say, well, I had this one from there, so I took it from there. So change it, make the flow, the important part. So it's about being open about that. So because it's a relationship built for your life, So and way to do it is to be open about these things. And from the very beginning, you start the relationship to say that open about it, use this one, tell me where you are using, how you are using it. And little by little, I think, I know this student, he's in the second year now, and he can look at it and say, okay, this is not good. And he was not able to do that in the first year. And it is because that continuous understanding of what is being approved by a supervisor, what is being regarded as a supervisor, this is something interesting, to something that comes out of a sentence. So they're catching on. I think this is what you give students over a period of time. And as you say, 3 years is a long time to build. So, but open about it and have that conversation, say where it's being used, and be open about if it's wrong about, and then discuss about it. And that's how I would go. That's how I'm currently going about it.
Yeah, so I want to sort of speak to the other side of the coin, basically. As a student, how do you sort of talk to your supervisors about the usage of Gen AI tools? That's number one. And also I want to hear your thoughts about what are the skills that particularly Sri Lankan postgraduate students need to develop, like let's say, for example, prompt engineering or anything. Like, are there any resources that are being provided to you all at University of Melbourne? Or do you think it should be done? For example, I think Dr. Uday was touching on this topic a little earlier. Like, it's not just about, the vehicle, it's just about how you drive it. So with prompt engineering, for example, you can come up with the proper prompts to get the right output. So do you have such facilitation at University of Melbourne, or any other skills that you as an AI grad student feel that would be nice to have at University of Morato, which is all of our alma mater at the end of the day. So you can share your thoughts.
Yeah. So I guess, so when you're talking with your supervisor, it's better to be open about it without trying to present something that's not yours as your own writing. So you can talk to your supervisor and say that, okay, I got some assistance from ChatGPT for that. And then your supervisor will also have a better understanding of what's going on. In terms of extra skills, as far as I know, even at the University of Melbourne, we don't have special facilities to develop those skills. I think it's just because these things are really new, and universities, not just universities, institutes, even schools are pretty cautious about it. So they don't openly encourage using these tools, but I'm guessing it's just a matter of time. So it's not practical to ban these tools, and people are going to use it, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I'm guessing maybe in a year or two, or maybe even sooner, the universities would be having, like you said, maybe courses on prompt engineering, just to educate students about how to better use these tools and also how to responsibly use them. So, so the University of Morato should also probably keep in touch with the ever-evolving technologies and make sure that they don't fall behind.
Yeah, so I think it's a learning curve for all of us, not just University of Morato. I think all the universities around the world are at the at the foot of a big mountain that we need to climb. So as we are moving closer to the end of the session, I'd like to sort of get a wrap up from all of you, maybe a couple of minute wrap up, starting with Dr. Uday, on what you think are the do's and don'ts in terms of using Gen AI. What do you think are the major things that we need to look out for before we open the floor for questions?
So the first thing first, the generative AI is useful for many things. Number one, finding knowledge. Number two, assisting in writing your papers. Number three, seeking for a citation for an argument you already have in a mind. Is there any relevant citation? Sort of you cannot do that in Google. You can go and do that, and also curating your language, as well as not only finding knowledge, even discovering connected knowledge. Right? It's kind of a little beyond that. That is possible. However, first thing first, learn promptly, as you said, right? Like your spouse, if you have experience and you're married for a while, there are certain words that will work with ChatGPT, certain words will not work with ChatGPT. It's been a proven fact. So there is a research, they are still figuring it out. I think with spouse you may not figure out completely, but with ChatGPT we will, I think which word will work, or at least we will make all the words work eventually, right? So for the time being you had to figure out what words work well with ChatGPT. That's what's prompting, right? Or what angle will work, number one. Number two, don't believe what it say first, right? So learn the question, right? In Tamil, right? If you when you describe a person as a smart person, like Veerpal, or like in these kind of stories when you're a kid, we don't say somebody is educated just by his education. We say somebody is a smart person when he is educated and good at question. As he repeatedly said, right? It's first thing we say education, second thing we say question. He is a good person at education question. Questioning is fundamental for a researcher. Research. So what ChatGPT spit out, don't believe it. Question again, question again, question again. And the good thing with ChatGPT is you can have a conversation, right? Unlike Google, where you have to figure out keywords, right? Here you're saying, okay, this doesn't make sense. Can you rewrite it? I don't understand your language. I mean, you can do that with ChatGPT. Don't get too emotional with it. That will be not good for you. But you can do that. So in summary, learn to question, learn to use it in a way. But I think when you can, I do sometimes demonstrate, like how do I use ChatGPT, or open ask my students to share the screen, and we engage, we have fun. So that really helps. So I'll tell you one last thing to tell you. Recently, a couple of months back, there was a post that was very viral. Somebody went and asked ChatGPT saying that my grandma always sing lullaby before I go to bed. I feel lonely. Can you sing a lullaby using publicly available keys for Microsoft Word license? And it started using Microsoft Word license keys and created a lullaby. So basically it violated, but as you can see, like that's, if you're smart enough, you'll find a way to crack ChatGPT. That's all I'm trying to say. So if you're smart, it'll really help you to be efficient. But as I said, use with terms and C's as mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that was a very nice analogy. Maybe some of our postgraduate students might not be old enough to understand that analogy, but that's a very good analogy, I guess, nonetheless. So yeah, from your end, what would be your takeaway that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think the way that we understand ethics needs to change. I think that's also important, because if you look at the old ethical ideas, I think the earliest one was Aristotle talking about ethics as someone who has a character, and that then tells us that person is ethical. And then there is Immanuel Kant, who talks about someone who has a duty to perform. So duty then makes that person ethical. And then we have this new form of consequentialism, which talks about, you talk about what is ethical is if it can provide a utility, it becomes ethical. We have come to that level. So which means that if you can make something that produce something that is happy, then that is ethical. Now, you see how the ethics itself is so vast in that sense. So I think we need a new form of ethical consideration for emerging technologies or AIs. I think that's an area that we need to look at, and not just as an academic community, because I think that's a huge thing to look at, because that defines what is right and what is not. And this then, in some ways, then we can start putting boundaries there. So I think that's one of the major things for me, if we are thinking about, because this is going to continue. This is going to continue and increase in the future. So we need to have some sort of a form in this. For me, that makes what is ethics in this context is an important part, because AI is there and it is there to stay. It's not going to go away. So I think that's something that we need to do. The second one for me is being open about it. I think it's important we expose this one to the students and then work with the students in terms of making that. There was a time, when Google came, people can say, okay, you can copy certain things and paste. And this is where the Turnitin similarity reports and things like that came in, because you can copy stuff. Because before that, everyone was thinking, there's nothing digital, you have to write on your own. So this is another stage, very similar stage, but in a different level. And I don't know what the future holds. So I think the important part for us to, sort of converse with it rather than staying away with it, and then use that for the advantage, but making sure that it is right for the situation. And again, I think depending on the situation, depending on the subject that you're looking at, maybe the boundaries are slightly different. I think that's also important for us to explore. So that's where we are.
Yeah, I think I really like the example that you gave, because maybe 30, 40 years ago, when someone was doing a PhD, obviously, they'd be writing it off scratch. They would be reading a paper from a journal, a physical copy rather than electronic copy. So then there was no real requirement to check for plagiarism. So there was no real concern. But now, obviously it's part and parcel of our process to check for plagiarism. So similarly, we are seeing a paradigm shift, and obviously new tools will come in. So Nisal, so what are your thoughts? You're at the forefront of developing these tools. You're using these tools. You're someone who's a budding academic. And what do you think are the things that we need to take away from Gen AI? How should we use it? What are the take-home message that you want to leave with the audience?
So as I was saying earlier, I was at the University of Melbourne when all of these things started, like maybe a year ago. So, and I see that even being like one of the biggest universities in the world, it's also like the universities also keep finding it hard to keep up with all of these. So there are probably a few things that I'd like to highlight, things that we probably need to focus on to keep up with these rapidly evolving technologies. So definitely one thing is there should be proper policies in place. So there should be clear boundaries that define, okay, what is acceptable use of AI tools and what is not. And there should be some defined consequences for going past those boundaries. And definitely another thing that I feel is that universities, not just universities, but schools and any education institutes should probably do some changes to their teaching material as well as methods, just to keep up with everything that's changing. So for example, I think the National University of Singapore had recently completely revamped their curriculum, keeping in mind that students are using these tools. So maybe that'll be like a shift from just checking whether the students can recall information to maybe testing more intellectual kind of questions. So all in all, I think we should always keep the future in mind. So ChatGPT might just be the beginning. So I'm sure in the next year or two, there'll be many more tools coming, maybe based on GPT, maybe based on some other new model. But the only thing we can say for sure is that this is just the beginning. So we know that if we are to survive, we need to adapt and change to the environment. And this is, at the moment, this has probably never been truer in the past.
Okay, thank you. So I think before we wrap things up, maybe we can open up the flow so that anyone in the audience can ask any questions. If you have anything from, the special, we have assimilated a panel of specialists with expertise from different parts of the world. Of course, we have PhD from University of Georgia, prestigious University of Georgia, as well as from the UK and Australia. So that's the beauty of Research Week. We are bringing together expertise from around the world to University of Moratuwa, which is very, very nice, and I think that's something we should be very proud about. So this is a unique opportunity to everyone. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to raise them.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I'm a lecturer and a PhD candidate as well. So I agree with all of what you said, and one Microsoft researcher, Kate Crawford, if I remember the name, I'm sorry if I'm mistaken, she has said once that artificial intelligence is not artificial, no, it's intelligence. And this idea was resonated in the previous days with the current situation in Palestine and Israel, where you type in ChatGPT whether you ask whether Palestinians should be free, and you ask the same question whether Israelis should be free. So the answer is so biased. Like, I'm not going to the political take here. So what I'm trying to say is that now when I see some of my students using ChatGPT, and even I for some purposes I use that. So my question is that should we at least guide our students where to use it and where not to use it? I mean, it should not be a magic wand, because as you correctly said, in some cases ChatGPT messes you up. I mean, I don't think at a student level we know exactly how to use that. I mean, I don't think ChatGPT even knows that, because it's still at the experimental level. So shouldn't we have an open dialogue and clearly say, okay, you can use this for paraphrasing, maybe. So it's like you are using a tool like Grammarly. So shouldn't we have an open discussion about this? So that's my idea on this, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's the point I was making. But you asked an interesting question. You asked whether should we tell the students as supervisors where to use it and where not to. I think we are not mature enough on that to advise the students. I mean, I should be frank about this, because we are learning at the same time as the students. But it's an interesting question, because there are places, I mean, we know that ChatGPT is something where you can actually, it's a method through which you can collect information, gather information, and gather information in a way that is summarized for you to understand. But you don't know whether it's right or wrong, because it's a black box that is producing it. So that's the challenge you have. And as you said, it's bias. It has an inherent bias, because what is fed into it is what it is going to do it. As interesting, I think it's neither artificial nor the intelligence. Absolutely, because the reason is what is producing is what is being fed into the training program. Also, it is also about who is feeding those things information. And I think the part of this process is labeling of things. So, for example, I mean, this is somewhere I read. So you have 10 pictures, and if it's just pictures, okay? It doesn't say a mood, it's just pictures. And you ask someone to rate those pictures in terms of their happiness level. It has nothing to do with happiness. This is just babies and maybe some animals and things like that, but you ask someone to rank them as happiness level. And they will do it because you asked them to do it and you paid them to do it. And then you feed that one into a system like AI, and then what it does is that it thinks that what you fed. So the labeling is also a major problem, and this is where, especially when it comes to politics, it's quite challenging, because world of politics, especially in internet, is of extreme views. Normal people who doesn't want to get involved in it, actually 60-70% of them, we don't get involved in this argument. The people who get involved in this argument is the one who are extreme supporters or extremely on the other side of the argument. So what you see is the polarized views in the internet or into documents, which is being fed into these type of systems, and therefore it gives you very polarized views. That is not a normal view of a normal, a person. So we need to be very careful when it comes to these things. You are right. I think we need to, we haven't in our university, but we need to put certain set of questions in terms of how to question the answers. I think the prompt structure, I think that's something that you mentioned, probably something we need to explore further. And the start of this is about open discussion. So I agree. I think that's where we should get head to.
I think you should stay away asking ChatGPT for opinions, and it is built with a layer to not to answer opinions to its best, but that layer itself is not so strong. So, for example, if you ask certain advice, it will say like, I am an AI engineer, I will not answer you in this, right? Like sort of certain questions. But it is not smart enough to avoid all type of questions. For example, if you go and ask who is right? What is right? Should this be done? I think it doesn't know where to draw. Like, should I define this as a constant or a private variable, public variable in a programming language? That it should be able to answer. That's not opinion. But if you ask like, should Palestine be liberated? Like, that's a very different question altogether. So I think this lead into a interesting point where which field for research this can be used, in which field this cannot be used as well. For example, social science, you have to figure it out where they position it, whereas for computer engineers and other similar disciplines where hard engineering disciplines, this may be a very different ball game altogether. So it's still an open question, as he said. I don't think there's an already existing answers. But yes, the bias is one thing that you may get trapped in if you go for opinion from ChatGPT.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the audience?
Yeah. Actually, before we move on, I want to thank the panel and the moderator for having an interesting session. I don't know whether you are aware, but it's figured that it's today's the birthday of ChatGPT. 29th of November, 1 year old now. So it's even though you say it's developing, it has been there quite a while. My question is actually, I agree with Nisal about the fairness regarding using these tools for when it is, I think only when it is about competitive elements like examinations but for knowledge creation, when we talk about research, we are, okay, presumably not competitive, but we may not think the same way, but when we consider it not to be competitive, why should we sort of consider limiting its usage by rules or ethical principles or something? So what is the reason for that? Why can't we just allow it in a way that, maybe encourage in a way that when you are using such tools, you have to acknowledge and use, like we cite others when we use others' knowledge. So if something is created through ChatGPT, we use it because we may be more efficient and more creative sometimes when we have a companion like that, when we generate knowledge. So why don't we encourage it in that manner, which I have not seen people doing that. So have you ever come across such scenario where it is encouraged, or is there a discussion like that around the world?
Interesting question. I completely agree. I think we should encourage people to use it. But the question where you mentioned that should we put any ethical boundaries? I think this is where probably we differ in that question. Because I think what is essential of any research paper is that whoever is doing it own up to that work. It's their work. And if there is not boundaries to make sure that it is someone's work, this is where, if there is no boundaries and you can still make sure that it is their work, then it's fine. But it is becoming very difficult. As you can see, people are starting to use them in a manner that they are producing things that is not right. That is one part. I think that's partly why the ethical things are. The second one for me is actually, if you write papers, as you mentioned, using ChatGPT, it doesn't look the same as you write the papers. I know the paper you write are more interesting than some of the papers that I have read from other how the ChatGPT present those things. We as human what we do is that we constantly question what we write, and therefore every sentence that you write builds your argument, and it provides an understanding to the context that you are writing. The problem with a system like this is that it doesn't specify the context, it just writes in general. And it's good to get the understanding, the knowledge from it, but to make an understanding of the situation, you need to be there as the person. And so for me, yes, we should use it. Yes, then there need to be some ethical concerns to make sure that it is your work, and also these ethical boundaries make sure that the paper you write is much more interesting than a paper written by a system.
Using generatives, AI, not only for research, even for presentation we can do, right? Even to beautify the presentation, create images, diagrams, there are many ways it can be used, right? For efficiency, I'm fine with, I don't have any problem, right? Because the only thing is that rather than going to ethics, even what I'm advising is, there will be a tendency for people to blindly trust it, take it and forward. If you blindly trust the spell characters in your smartphone, you know what will happen, and you have seen that. Same thing will happen if you do that. That's the only cautious I am making. Ethics, I think as you rightly put, definition of ethics itself seems to be far more complex. So for using it for research, to figure it out, to cite, even to paraphrase and write, I don't think that's a problem. I don't think you need even, you don't cite spell characters for using. Same way you don't cite this for using it. But you don't expect ChatGPT to give you novelty. Simple as that. You have a novelty, you have found out, you are using it to assist, I'm fine. It's more like drawing. I'm not drawing a line like you should not use it, like block the IP. No, that's not where I'm going. Where, at least my opinion is. Did that make sense?
Yeah, actually, there's a small point that did not come to you the discussion when I mentioned this. The point I highlight, say for example, when we are doing the review, literature review, certain knowledge we take from others' findings, and certain ones we might be quite critical about, but certain things we just take and cite them, and we don't go and bother to figure out whether they really found it or not, right? So then when we write a paper with that, so we give the citation in a manner that so and so found it, and we leave the risk to them without taking to us. So the reviewers will know that, okay, this is not this person's finding, it is coming from somewhere else. So whether to accept that or not is a choice or a decision to make, right? So my question is, why don't we do a similar thing rather than doing like using ChatGPT and pretend it as our work, show that this is ChatGPT work, this is so and so work, not my work. Say there's a citation kind of a system, nothing is there yet, but I'm asking, why don't we think something like that instead of just letting it to be hidden and to be pretended as the author's work, but not really the author's work. Get my point?
Yeah, I think I get it. First of all, you should review every paper that you write in your paper. When you cite something on your paper, it needs to be read. You can't just say it's someone else's work and therefore I am not taking the responsibility for the name I have put on the paper. That is not right. So first of all, we need to take responsibility every citation that we make, including someone selected someone else in that paper. That's very important. So I have to disagree with you on that first point. The second point is an interesting one, because you are mentioning that whether we could use ChatGPT as it is and say that it is coming from ChatGPT. And I'm going to the same thing as the first one. It needs to, and I think one of the things that sort of worries me a little bit, we use ChatGPT to produce or recall certain knowledge. And then we say, rewriting it in our own way is pretending to present someone else's work? No. I think this is where you become the person who's interpreting the things. So you said that we have two papers. One I don't agree with and therefore I'm criticizing. This paper I'm just citing it because that's there. You are doing it because you agree with one of them and you don't agree with the other one. That's your personal point of view. So if you have, and ChatGPT will not take that personal point of view. It will cite all of them as it is. It is not going to disagree with one because the reason is that is what it is there. You as a person, you have taken a point, you have taken a stance. And in that stance you are saying, this is my argument. In this argument, this paper, I disagree with because I don't agree with it because my stance is different. And this paper, I agree with it, therefore I'm going to put this paper. That's fine, but you need to still read that paper.
No, I'm not talking about read that, but we don't go and see whether that person has collected the real data and did the analyze right, because whatever presented in the paper only we can see, right? So, and the same way when ChatGPT generates the answer, we don't see how the answer is generated.
Yes.
So why can't we just say so and so has found this, so and so and found this, and ChatGPT is saying this. So and then I analyze and write what we want that.
Personally, I'm not willing to give a status to ChatGPT equal to a paper that is peer reviewed by 2 fellow scientists and accepted. That is why I'm not ready to cite ChatGPT's findings. I think that's fair to accept.
Yeah, so I think one other main thing that arises from that is the problem of accountability. So say you go and cite someone and whatever research that person has done is entirely wrong. At some point someone will point that out, maybe he plagiarized from something else, or maybe his data is manipulated and that person will get blacklisted or whatever. So that person will be held accountable for the wrong information that he has published. But if you get something from ChatGPT and you realize at some point that this is wrong, then who is accountable for that? That is, I think, the main problem.
Yeah, so I think since we are running out of time, we'll have to wrap it up. I'm sure you have other ample questions. If you do, you can chat with the speakers if they are sticking around after the session. So thank you very much for joining, and I think we had a very productive session. I'm very appreciative of Professor Niraj Tureraja, Dr. T. Udayasankar, as well as Mr. Nisal Ranasinghe for being here. So thank you for sharing your time with us for the research week, and we had very interesting insights coming from different backgrounds, which is very useful. So thank you to Professor Udayangani Kulatunga also for inviting me to be the facilitator for this session. So with this, I think we can conclude the Fireside Chat for Research Week 2023, and we have an exciting event just around the corner with the 3MT presentation. So I'd like to hand over controls back to the MC.
Thank you, specialists on different disciplines, and I would like to thank again for all the panelists and the moderator for giving an insightful discussion. And also, this is the beauty of Research Week, which is like connecting all the disciplines, which is a multidisciplinary discussion. So, and also I would like to thank our interactive audience as well for coming up with various questions and making it bit constructive and taking things from the discussion. So before we go to the 3MT session, so I would like to invite Dr. Nayani Gunawardana to Dr. Nayani Gunawardana, because it is our responsibility, and also it's an honor to appreciate our panelists and the moderator. So first of all, I invite Associate Professor Niraj Tureraja. Dr. T. Udayasankar. Thank you, madam. Next, I call upon stage Dr. Nadika Jayavira to present token of appreciation. Mr. Nisal Ranasinghe. And Professor Nilas Pereira, our moderator of the Fireside Chat. Thank you, madam. Thank you again for our specialists in Fireside Chat and the moderator for making an eye-opening discussion on AI and how to use it in research context and what is the ethical context of the new world of research. So now we are moving to the 3MT thesis competition, which is one of the significant events of Research Week 2023. So I call upon Dr. Chamira Edusurya, representing organizing committee, to start up with the 3MT thesis competition with an introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will take a few minutes to arrange the session, and after that we will start